You are listening to Seniors Junction podcast. Your hosts, Dr. Namrata Bagaria, and myself, Dr. Paul Merkley, co-founders of Seniors Junction. We are ending seniors isolation one conversation at a time. Our special guest today is Osvaldo Montelongo, founder of ConnectCare. Welcome. And could you tell us about yourself and your company, what you do in the industry?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. So I'm Osvaldo Montelongo. I'm the founder of ConnectCareHero, and we are helping organizations tackle social isolation one activity at a time. So very similar there. We believe that the power of activities is immeasurable, and by being able to be a front door for organizations through activities, something that's very personalized and to the older adult, you can actually get more key data. We were based out here in Chicago. I actually started the company because of my dad. He was he had me at 57 years old, and in my early 20s, I had to move into a nursing home. And when I moved into a nursing home, it was really my first deep dive into what is, senior living. And, I had no idea what dementia was. I had no idea what nursing home was, being a Latino. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to, the lack of personalized, culturally relevant programming.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, what was your observation or experience among social isolation in seniors? And what are the main pain points according to you?
Yeah, so I think we've all, not given the pandemic, we've all realized what social isolation is, right? Being isolated. I always tell this, my dad was in a nursing home for 5 years before even COVID even happened. And so he already had a taste of it. Him and millions of other older adults had it, they've been living that as their normal. And it's a big effect on just obviously, overall health, quality of life. And one of the things that really just opened my eyes to what needed to change was that, my dad was, one of hundreds of older adults in his community. But when I saw him, he looked very lonely, very depressed, very isolated. And I asked him a very simple question. I was like, why, hey dad, do you want to do something? What do you want to do? And he's like, well, there's nothing here for me to do. He's like, they're doing bingo, they're doing some type of, classical drawings, classical music. I have no idea what that stuff. I need mariachi. Let's go bring some tamales and make them. And so that was kind of my first insight in terms of, something needed to change. And there really wasn't anyone really focused on the cultural side.
What's your vision of solving this issue?
I think the way we view to solve social isolation, and I don't think it's for solving social isolation, I think it's becoming more preventative. So I believe that we can be, and we're positioned as being a front door for organizations, whether it's senior living, home care organizations, or even insurance plans that want to engage their populations, get the key data they need to identify who the rising risks are of those groups. And I think, you want to engage people. I always tell a story of my dad, a 40-year Mexican farmer. If you would have asked him, like, hey, Mr. Machalongo, do you feel lonely? Or how do you feel? He'd say, good, bien. But if you really engaged him in something, in like an activity, you'd actually notice that he was actually showing different things. It's like he wasn't doing well. And I think for us, that's the way we quote unquote solve it, is being more preventative, more of an assessment / screening to basically help organizations say, hey, these are our most at-risk populations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think these are the kind of things we also find, like with some of our friends and some of our attendees for the events, like what we've done so far, like a lot of them will be like, I'm fine, but they're not fine, right? They and Paul, one of Paul's friend, I realized was not fine, and it also goes back to because I had a clinical background. I guess I was used to knowing when someone tells you I'm good, but you know it's not because of the training, because of exposure and working in the communities. And what I find is just telling him about it, and then he actually called up that person and followed up. And then he realized that no, it's a she is lonely, and then he started calling the person more often, I guess. But I think it's also the community education piece, which because I'm from public health background, I feel a lot of stuff which I assume, like, did you not sleep today? Or like, because you can, the face is a book, like you can look at the person and tell. But sometimes we're trying to be politically correct, or sometimes the cultural way of not saying something. But I think in this community, especially where your interactions are much lesser, your exposures are much lesser. Nobody like we have to train people and tell, like, family members or even like online hosts like us. So it's I totally agree with what you say. And I mean, my own father, when he was in the ICU, if you ask him, Dad, how are you? He would just do two thumbs up, and he was not okay, obviously, but it's the culture, right? So I totally relate to every word you said.
I think one of the biggest things, and this is kind of where I'm very passionate about, is that people are going to tell you what you want to hear, right? If you ask them. But if you can engage him, like my dad, hey, Mr. Montalongo, here's some mariachi live virtual sessions. Enjoy, right? And then with that data, we have our own proprietary technology. Basically, we can pull key data through that and basically identify, hey, this is a trend. You may need to take a look at Mr. Montalongo, my dad, because he's not, responding as well to the actual things he may enjoy. And so that's our approach. But I agree, it's one of those things I am a solely you ask as even a professional, even as a son. I knew him because I knew what he was his baseline. But if anyone would ask them, especially a professional medical person, he would just basically say, good, I'm doing fine. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where the power of personalized activities comes in, to be a front door for, the medical professionals to basically have more data-driven insights.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, like you said, cultural. Like I've seen when I live in Canada, especially Ottawa. I don't know about the other parts of Canada, but if you ask how are you, people answer not bad, and not bad is not good either, right? So what do you like? You've seen that, right? Pas mal, not bad, and you're like, okay, wow. So it doesn't help me, right? And usually, so that kind of in between, fine or not bad, like those two, I would say they are like a rating 3 in between answers. You don't know, and then sometimes, especially with like a country like Canada or some other geographies which are so spacious, isolation is a part of basically living in this kind of a setup, right? So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, not just to personalize activities, but also to, I think, build a culture where the care is about caring and not about just having someone admitted in your system, right? So I think that part also, I think, is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's to add to that as well. It's really being on the preventative side, right, and giving the right dose of information at the right time.
Yes.
And so it's not right when they're basically now isolated. That's like the hardest person to get out, and reach at the end of the day. So it's how do you tell early on that there's something going on, and say, hey, here's some resources for you.
Yeah.
Without being so direct.
Yeah. What you do is so unique and so interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about the challenges that you faced and the opportunities that you found through them?
Yeah, I think the challenges we've faced early on, even now too. I think COVID has helped. Is just around the education side, right? Educating not necessarily the families or the older adults themselves, the seniors, but more of the people that actually write the checks, right, for services like us, and saying, hey, I think the education was the biggest part, because it's now starting to pick up because pandemic really forced us into a virtual setting. But not only that, it's like, how effective is virtual programming? And so we've been able to kind of create a technology that helps them drive more data. So really, for us, has been the challenge, and it will always be one, I think, especially in a new sector, new industry that has been techless for a long time. I think it's around education, but we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And what would you say, minus the COVID, like that's for most digital companies, it has been the reason why that business accelerated. And it's a quite an appalling way that it happened. I mean, because now everybody, the bodies become faces and the faces become names, kind of a situation. Like, I'm giving condolences every day for the past 3 weeks. There are so many people dying everywhere in India, and of course in Canada too, but more so in India. So when you talk about minus the COVID, what was the real opportunity that, as an entrepreneur, what was it that struck and that you can share with us? Which is,
I think we were around, ConnectCareHero was around before COVID, and I think we found a niche in the space that was around focusing on activities, and showing our customers, organizations we work with, what real ROI we're driving for them. In some cases, length of stay, attracting and retaining, residents in their communities. And that was, something we really focused on really providing, was saying, hey, we're going to do activities really, really well for you, enhance experiences for older adults and their families, and that will lead to some key levers for you. And so for us, that was really the opportunity. I think one of the things, I come from the global marketing space. I was doing that for about 9-10 years. And basically that experience really helped me strategically say, you know what, let's be really niche and really good and just own the space. I saw a lot of other companies just focusing on other things. They saw the next shiny dollar and they went their shiny quarter and they went to that. And so, and started adding it, which is, I think it's a good strategy. I won't definitely say anything negative about that, but I think when you are niche, you can be really, really good at something and discover more, go more in depth. And so I think that was really some opportunity that we discovered prior to COVID as well.
Yeah, I think I second what you said. I mean, Paul and I also had similar conversation just before you got on the call. It's not just about, it's not a one person solution personally. Like, I don't think any company on this earth can say we solve social isolation. There's so many things. There's social determinants of health. There's right, income, education, race. Those are systemic issues which will need those kind of solutions to help. And then there are different ways that people live. Then some live at home, some live in nursing homes. There's some transient to different places of living over as their health changes. And so, of course, social isolation looks different in different ways. And then there's personality, right? There's so many things, there's culture, there's so many aspects to social isolation, physical, physiological. It's almost, I would say, a full spectrum, which in itself it has an impact, and then it gets affected by other things that you have, right? If you have like COPD, you will be more socially isolated because you probably can't participate in activities, right? So, so yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think for leading to that, Paul, do you want to ask him what's the next question?
Yes, and you've partly answered it, but what advice do you have for a startup like us, which is focusing on tackling this issue?
Yeah, I think any advice I have, any group coming into the social engagement space is to, I believe, focus on the data you can drive and collect. It's one thing just to have people register for an event virtually, but it's another thing to obviously collect key non-invasive data that can help you identify, key drivers. And so that's what I tell any group. And so I think it's definitely, in my opinion, the winning strategy at long term, because there's a lot of things out there. I mean, there's a ton of classes, there's a ton of sessions in, different ways, but at the end of the day, I say it's like a gunshot effect. You're trying to, see how many you can get, and maybe the ones that, that you don't get, like then obviously they become, people that get isolated, and you miss them by a long shot. While I always say, like, be more preventative and be more laser focused on how you identify who the at-risk populations are. And that's always a tough thing to figure out. But I think as long as you have that in mind, it's going to, I think, in my opinion, play well long-term.
That's well said. And to all the people who are listening in North America, whether Canada or US, and maybe even India, because we have a lot of listeners here, can you tell about your coordinates? How can they find out about you?
Yeah, so anyone that is interested can go to www.connectcarehero.com. Fill out a interest form there. We have, one of the things that makes us unique is that we do have over 200 live master guides, vendors, which we, are entertainers, educators, people that are masters in their craft. 20 unique categories, 9 different languages in short and long formats, all driven around, making sure we personalize the experience and drive that engagement. So people can reach out to us and see if there's any classes they can join within our platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much.